Good afternoon, and welcome to our session, Building the Next Generation of Cyber Leaders. First, I'd like to thank our host, Florida International University and New America. I also want to thank the NICE conference staff, working groups, and councils for accepting our proposal to present today and for all of their hard work organizing this conference. My name is Rick Kempinski, and I am a senior manager at the Partnership for Public Service, a nonpartisan nonprofit organization whose mission is to help the federal government become more effective and efficient and to inspire a new generation to serve in public service. During this session, we will discuss the Cybersecurity Talent Initiative, or CTI, that the partnership launched in April 2019 in collaboration with Mastercard, Microsoft, and Workday, and 12 participating federal agencies. Our panelists will discuss how this program is working to provide opportunities for the recent graduates to gain experience in the public and private sectors, and how we are using the NICE framework to help us develop these cyber leaders of the future. I will moderate the session and am joined by three distinguished panelists who have been instrumental to the success of the program as we implemented it over the past year and a half. First, Alexander Niejelow is a Senior Vice President for Cybersecurity Coordination and Advocacy at Mastercard. Next, we have Rob Tagalicod, who serves as the Chief of Cybersecurity and Privacy Communications and Engagement in the Office of Information Security at the US Department of Health and Human Services. Finally, we have Simone Petrella, CEO and founder of CyberVista, that serves as the program's technical partner. I will begin with a quick introduction of CTI and then turn it over to our panelists to discuss how the program is building the next generation of cybersecurity leaders. We will leave some time at the end for some questions, but feel free to also enter your questions into the chat and we will try to answer them as we go along or during the Q&A period. Next slide. As we all know, there are over 500,000 positions that are going unfilled in cybersecurity across the country in both the public and private sector. In addition, cybersecurity breaches continue to occur regularly, and there is a huge need to find talent to help defend us from these attacks for the American people. In response, CTI was launched in April 2019 with the following objectives: to address the immediate cybersecurity talent deficiency faced by the United States. Second, to provide a cross-sector opportunity for entry-level talent in order to build the next generation of cybersecurity leaders. Finally, the program supports efforts to address a related major public policy issue, rising student loan debt that has reached $1.6 trillion in 2019. Next slide. To help with our efforts, we have three corporate partners, Mastercard, Microsoft, and Workday, 12 federal agencies, and our technical partner, CyberVista, supporting the program. The partnership serves as the operating partner and is responsible for recruiting candidates from US colleges and universities, finding cybersecurity subject matter experts to help with the review and selection process, and matching these candidates with opportunities at the federal agencies and corporate and private companies. Next slide. I will now discuss in more detail a little bit more about how the program works. Currently enrolled students graduating at the undergraduate or graduate level in cybersecurity or cybersecurity related programs, such as computer science, information technology, engineering, and math, can apply and be selected into the program. Applicants must be US citizens, have superior academic achievement, and have outstanding student loan debt. Once accepted into the program, they'll be placed for 2 years at a participating federal agency and begin the summer or fall after graduation. During their time in the public sector, they will get on-the-job training at their agency and be part of a cohort receiving professional development training that will be provided by the partnership, such as communication skills, setting professional and personal goals, and working on career pathing. In addition, they receive a skills assessment and technical training provided by CyberVista. The partnership has also created a mentorship program matching up participants with a cybersecurity professional in the public or private sector to help them on their career journey. As the end of their 2 years approaches, CTI participants will be invited to apply for opportunities with our corporate partners, and if selected, begin transitioning from the public to private sector. Also, if selected for a position in the private sector, our corporate partners have agreed to provide up to $75,000 inclusive of tax of student loan assistance to the participants. Next slide. We believe that this program is a win-win-win for all of our stakeholders. Our federal agency partners will fill critical positions to help achieve their missions and develop a diverse pool of talent that may not have otherwise considered public service. Our corporate partners will work with technologists who will be able to support corporate cybersecurity needs on day one and foster relationships between private and sector and government. And for our participants, they will gain valuable cross-sector experience, develop skills through professional development and technical training, and receive generous student loan assistance that will help them on their new career journey in this field. Next slide. Again, I want to welcome our panelists, Alex, Simone, and Rob. We'll begin with our first question, and I'll start with Alex. Alex, how do you see CTI aligning with your mission to attract early career talent in cybersecurity?
So thanks, Rick. Great to see everyone and great to have folks. I know it's not always easy to attend virtual events, so I doubly appreciate everyone that's come out and is focused on this important effort. CTI aligns with our corporate mission on talent, I think perfectly. It speaks to the need that all of our companies and the government currently faces, and to the type of individuals that we want to both imbue a set of skill sets and training early on in their career development, but also as they can progress towards the private sector. For us as a company, we've always found that our greatest partnerships have been both public and private, but also with our research institutions. And to be able to find a way to bring all three of those together to both benefit our cause and to the students is a really special moment, and also speaks to really a core belief set of how we think about empowering each segment of the population.
Thanks, Alex. Rob?
Great. So a little bit about the Department of Health and Human Services and why that aligns with CTI's objectives with our objectives. I think most of you already know that the Health and Human Services is pretty a diverse organization. So whether that's healthcare payments through Medicare and Medicaid, research, grants, clinical and preventive services, or food and drug safety, that's our mission. And the mission of our Office of Information Security and all cybersecurity professionals is really aligned to the NIST framework, and it's really identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover, and all those kind of things that are needed in order to provide the services that I just outlined in a way that's timely, and that regardless of any cyber threat, we either prevent it or we recover very quickly from it. So again, that's the kind of diversity and need. And when you're faced with as much as 30% vacancy rate in our ranks, that becomes really important to look beyond what we've currently done, and to be a little bit more successful is to work with the private and public sectors together, such as through CTI, in order to make that happen and to reduce that vacancy rate and get the kind of quality talent that we need in order to do the work of cyber security and resilience. Back to you, Rick.
Thanks, Rob. Simone, do you want to add some comments?
Yeah, so we're a little bit different because CyberVista, our mission is as a cybersecurity workforce development company to help create the entry-level talent that is the mission of many of these companies. But as far as it pertains to CTI, the way it relates to us is that we have a very employer-driven perspective in how training and workforce development can actually solve not only the talent shortage, but also the skills gap that exists in the cybersecurity realm today. And so by working with employers, both in the public and the private sector, to identify where there are potential areas to upskill entry-level talent, which is an area that I know a lot of organizations struggle with to bring as part of their talent strategy. That really fits in line with our goal to identify alternative pools of talent that can actually serve and be successful in cybersecurity jobs.
Wonderful, thank you all. So why, if you could kind of expand a little bit more on why you think it's important for more companies and agencies to join the initiative, what are the benefits, and what do you recommend agencies do immediately to take advantage of this program? Rob, do you want to start?
Sure. In the first year of the program, I rolled up my sleeves and got involved in the review of participants. And, to riff on what Simone just said, we're looking at talent, one, right out of school, or two, those who had a career and are reskilling and see their second and third careers. And so what we're looking at, and why this is really important, is to take a look at what is available to us through this program and the kind of diversity that we've seen in the process in order to fulfill our ranks. And so we're not only just talking about filling slots, we're also talking about the long term. People who not only will come in and go out in a few years, but who will stay with us much longer. And contributing to that is the work or the rotation with the private sector is really important, because we see this as a coextensive or related ecosystem of businesses, because we depend a large part on the private sector to ensure the security of our services. So I think, again, going through that process, looking at candidates, looking at their experiences that could help and fit our program, not only in terms of skills, but of culture. If you're invested in public service, then this is one of the places to come to understand, again, the mission I just outlined. It's a pretty exciting place to be at. And we don't feel that we're going to lose somebody if they're going to go into the private sector. Again, working with Mastercard, working with Microsoft, working with others is really important in fulfilling our mission, because quite frankly, they will learn, whoever comes through the program, from the private sector into back, and hopefully to the public sector. Back to you, Ray.
Thanks, Rob. Alex, do you want to talk about
Sure.
the corporate partner side? Great.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, to take a key out of Rob's point, some of us already have rolled up our sleeves and are ready to keep digging in on it. So, look, I think the point he just made is one that is at the core of this, and it's about building pathways. I think it's an important word, right? What he just described is about career and growth trajectory and pathways, both within the government, into the private sector, back, and vice versa. And I think all too often we think that these pathways exist naturally, and they frankly do not. And it's incumbent upon us, we think, as the private sector, where we have both the capacity at a financial level, but also the resources to build out programs exactly like this. So one, that's at its core of a belief set and why we find it beneficial. Second is fundamentally around the talent that the partnership has brought in on students that are into this cohort and the mentor programs that we're doing. The benefit to a private company in the first instance of growth and leadership skills before they even hit the door is unheard of. And so that out of the gate is a win for us. Rick, you asked a question a little bit about why it's important for companies to join and for the government to join too. I also want to revert back. I've got 4 numbers of why that's important. And they are the following: 3, 12, 450,000, and 1.6 trillion. 3 corporate partners, 12 agencies, 450,000 open positions, and 1.6 trillion in outstanding student debt. If we're going to even begin to build pathways, those numbers need to scale and grow.
Yeah, and if I can just add one thing, even on a personal note, because my career myself, I've been in cybersecurity for 15 years, and my career started in the government with the Department of Defense, and I then moved into the private sector, creating my own pathway. To Alex's point, not that there had been one for me, but I think that especially when we talk about cybersecurity and how ubiquitous the need is, because whether you're a financial services company or other critical infrastructure, or contributing to the economy, or a government agency that's either protecting infrastructure or healthcare systems, you name it, we're all going towards we're aiming towards the goal of having a more secure society and democracy that we live in. And so we all have a vested interest in having qualified talent. And so if we can set the expectation that government agencies are on board because they can identify and foster talent, have an opportunity to give them a great experience, if corporate companies can take advantage of that talent because they gain skills in the government that kind of parlay into what they need in the private sector, and then many of those candidates will learn things in the private sector that they may have a mission or reason to go back into government at some later point in their careers as well. And I think that kind of creating that expectation, but also normalizing the fact that we don't need someone to pick a career position and stay there forever, we all benefit in the end.
Yeah, and if I can riff on what you just said, Simone, about pathways, as well as yours, Alex, is mine, for example, was not a traditional pathway. I started in finance and philosophy, 30 years ago. It just so happened that the trajectory that took place was as cybersecurity was becoming more important in IT, particularly the proliferation of the digital economy. A lot of times the IT portion was embedded in finance. And so that's where I started my career. But it wouldn't have been great to work with a program like CTI who can put this all together, because that trajectory took about 30 years. And the kind of mentorship, the kind of training, because it's not just the technical skills. One of the things that I know that you, Simone, were talking about in terms of CyberVista was, what is the well-rounded cyber professional? And that's the ability to communicate to diverse audiences what, for example, a threat is to a particular business. And some business owners have no idea what you're talking about if you just talk tech. And the other thing is, how do you do budgets? How do you do other things in order to be the well-rounded professional? So our investment, the federal investment, is going to be a good one, because coming out of it is someone who's going to be well-rounded.
Thanks, Rob. That's a great point. So Simone, can you talk a little bit more about how CyberVista is planning on assessing and training the CTI participants aligned with the NICE framework to help develop them? Yeah.
Sure. So to Rob's point, the goal here is to ultimately have well-rounded cybersecurity professionals, and they're getting so much of that through the on-the-job experience they're getting through their agency placements, the leadership and communications training they're getting through CTI. But one of the things that we saw, and I have seen in my own career in cybersecurity, is that many times, because of the lagging evolution of cybersecurity jobs, they've changed so rapidly, there really isn't a common baseline or kind of entry-level standardization of skills that anyone needs to go into a particular role in cybersecurity. And for CTI participants in particular, that's really important, because they're in agency placements where they're not all doing the same job. Some are more compliance focused, some are more analytics focused, some are more investigative, in investigative roles. And so the goal is to identify what are the skills they have across the board that makes them well-rounded from a technical perspective. But and that's important for them as individuals and participants, and that they gain those skills throughout the program. But from a data perspective of CTI, we also want to have an understanding through assessing them at the beginning, where are these candidates starting, where's their starting point, where is their baseline in their skill sets, how does that align, and how does that sync up or not sync up with the role that they're placed in. And then once they go through not only technical training that we provide, but also their on-the-job experience, how are they improving, and how do we measure that and make it meaningful? Because ultimately, whether you invest in training or apprenticeships or any program, it doesn't have value unless you can make it meaningful, and they're either better at their jobs, they're more effective in their programs, and you can't know that without having a way to measure it. And so what we'll be doing is we are measuring, we're giving them essentially a diagnostic at the beginning of their experience, which has just kicked off. And then as they go through training, they will be measured and assessed along the way. And when we finally see them at the end through a final, we'll actually be able to identify whether they have truly, improved, and they're meeting that line of threshold that they would need to be successful in the roles that they are in.
Thanks, Simone. And Rob and Alex, would you like to talk a little bit about your thoughts on the training aspect of the program and how that'll benefit the participants in the long run?
Sure, I'll just be real brief on it. I think the examples of what Rob said, and Simone just a moment ago too, on it's not just a linear pathway, whether it's in cybersecurity or not, is analogous to the different types of professional elements and types of roles that exist in cybersecurity too, right? And so the ability to have both a frontline set of assessments in a way that is frankly not confrontational or feels like the student or individual is being judged by their supervisor is a powerful thing right at the early set of your career, and to help you think about what's right for me, what am I more interested in, maybe a slight pivot in the portion of whether it's an investigatory role or working in a SOC, insert other examples here. To me, I find actually empowering and special. So that's my short answer.
Yeah. I mean, similarly, where the training is really valuable, well, first off, it's aligned with a nice framework, right? And so there are some core things that we're looking at. So analyze, collect and operate, investigate, operate and maintain, oversee, protect and defend, and securely provision. So those are the kind of common sets, the common language, the common framework that we're all operating on. And building upon that again, and just to reiterate a point that we've all made, right, is so what does constitute or make up a well-rounded professional? And it's those other things. And it's interesting that people call them soft skills. I actually call them hard skills, because some of those things are really key in order to ensure an organization like HHS, probably like Microsoft, probably like Mastercard, different businesses, different business owners with different technical language, to be able to communicate to those business partners what a threat is and how to mitigate that in terms of an actionable information. Actionable information that comes from one's mouth or one's presentation is really important. So I think that training, and we've been looking at training internally as well. And I think this program aligns with that on the outcomes that we're seeking.
Great, thanks everyone. As we mentioned, part of the program is the mentorship program that the partnership has created, where we have matched up seasoned cybersecurity professionals from the public and private sectors who serve as mentors to help guide the CTI participants on their career journey. So can you speak to a little bit about your own journeys on mentorship and why you think it's important, it's a great component for this program? We can start with Simone.
Maybe that speaks to it, that none of us had great mentors to start.
No, unlike what Alex just said, I actually think I did have some amazing mentors along the way. Otherwise, I probably would not have found my way into cybersecurity at all, whether I intended to or not. But, I think to kind of make it personal to my own journey, like so many others, like Rob, like Alex, I didn't have this traditional pathway into cybersecurity. I didn't have a computer science degree or an engineering degree. I have an international relations degree, and I worked in the intelligence community. So that was my start in the Department of Defense. And, my perspective on even getting into cybersecurity was from an analyst side. And so I had to learn the technical because we cared about what nation state actors were doing, what the attacks looked like, what their tactics, techniques, and procedures look like, and thus you need to know what impact that has on a network. But that wasn't something I went to get trained for. But when you have mentors who haven't come from traditional paths, they can give a perspective to now every student now is saying, I got a cybersecurity degree or I'm getting a master's in something, and they don't necessarily always see the avenues or the job opportunities that exist that actually kind of interplay with some of those non-traditional pathways that exist into the field today. And I think the easiest way to sort of exemplify that is there are roles that exist today that weren't around 3 years ago or 4 years ago. Like no one was looking for threat hunters 4 years ago. Their job role literally didn't exist. And so the best way to provide anyone perspective who's coming into the field to say, here's how you can maybe use your skills in a unique way, that's kind of like your Sherpa. And you have to be willing to kind of chart a new path. So I think it's incredibly important because not only is it showing new entry-level candidates, here's something you can go do, but in some cases, they're actually going to be potentially charting their own paths towards a role that doesn't exist today that will exist 3 years in the future.
Yeah, I had a very similar experience. I had a great mentor at CMS. She literally picked me out of the fold and said, "Would you like to oversee the Medicare and Medicaid EHR incentive program?" That was a $27 billion program. That means I had to interact with all the CMS systems, and I'm going, "Oh my God, what am I going to get into?" Plus, part of the title was Chief Privacy Officer, had to work with the Cybersecurity Officer at CMS. That led me over the last 6 years to be firmly implanted in cybersecurity. The mentor was able to see my abilities, but also couch me in a very well-rounded way. She not only could speak data, finance, mission. She mentored me through the program and said, well, and basically this is how you work with different executive audiences and audiences that are not necessarily supportive of from a policy perspective or from a program perspective regarding your outcomes. And so again, the training here, the ability, the mentorship, a community of others. The one thing that she did create was a community of like-minded, positive people. So the combination of mentorship, of community, a kind of community that CTI is creating, helped me in this trajectory. And honestly, I see myself going forward. And part of the permutation of that is the data. One of the things that I've been a champion of is health IT or data interoperability. Once you talk about interoperability, you're talking about security and privacy. And so I'm firmly embedded. I never thought I was going to be in this space 6 years ago, firmly in this space. I thought I was in and I thought I was out. Back to you, Rick.
Great. So diversity is such an important topic, especially in cybersecurity. How do you all envision this program can address that issue in the cybersecurity workforce across sectors?
So I can tell you right now, the program's addressing it in its first iteration, which is one of the things that I'm most proud of and we hoped to see, but didn't expect quite at the levels, frankly, that we're seeing both demographically as well as in gender, outpacing national averages. Rick, what's the number? Between 10 to 17% higher, I believe, in the respective categories.
I think that's right.
So as a start point, that is an incredibly powerful differentiator, both for us as a company, and I also think to the federal agencies. It goes back to an earlier question of what do you see as one of the benefits of the program? The fact that you can create pathways that enable the best talent to rise and also support both gender and racial and national origin diversity, which is often a perpetual topic that people speak about but don't do anything about, is a pretty special benefit that we're quite proud of. Got to do more, but.
Yeah, I think one of the other interesting things about just putting a program in place like this, where there is so much infrastructure around the kind of cultivation of these candidates. So it's not just cherry picking qualified talent and saying, here you go, you have this opportunity. It's actually an investment on both the federal agencies standpoint, but also the corporate, the companies here, the corporate partners, to say, we're investing in the growth and development of this talent. And I think when you do that as an organization, I know this is a soapbox issue of mine when it comes to diversity and increasing diversity in cybersecurity, you are opening the aperture of the types of pools of talent that you can draw from, because you're no longer relying on, here is my kind of minimal pool of qualified personnel and they all happen to look the same in, you know, the non-diversity statistics of the world. And now we can start to look beyond that and say, where is there high potential where we can grow someone into that role? And I think that does take a mindset shift. I think to Alex's point, there's a lot of work to be done. And I think that it takes a lot of convincing on the private sector and the public sector to say, look, we're not going to be able to find talent just by, waiting for it to grow up externally and plucking it out. We have to make the commitment, the investment, and that's time, energy, and money to kind of create it ourselves. And I think that's how you start to continue to keep the diversity momentum we've seen in this first cohort going.
And a little bit different take. I mean, it was a cultural change for us at HHS, because one of the things that we wanted to do is, here's the job announcement, go apply for it, and hopefully, crossing our fingers, we get the right sort of candidate. And that really hasn't, panned out in the terms of, the bottom line, the 30% or so vacancy rate. And then when we look at some people coming in, we're going, maybe not the right fit. And we need to start growing people through a program like this in order to be part of the culture. So, but before that was actually changing the culture to accept people who are who came through non-traditional means. And I think that's one of the kind of testimonies of the program is how do you I'll use the word force, or how do you create the opportunities for change? And sometimes people came kicking and screaming. But I think, again, for our audience and people who are listening, it does require that communication upfront and understanding what is the benefit of participating in a program like this, and where, again, they open up the aperture. And I think people know, talk about it, but this is behaving out of it. And so this is really a different practice, if you will. And diversity comes with it. And I think, and I know we commit to it, but again, this is another way of looking at it and achieving that. So back to you, folks.
Great. I want to leave some time for questions as well, but I guess my final question for you all is really, what do you think is the future of the cybersecurity workforce, and how can CTI help get folks there?
Well, I'll take a stab at starting it. So without sounding like I'm trying to make cybersecurity into everything, but I am. I think the future of the cybersecurity workforce is that almost every role is ultimately a cybersecurity role in the future. Maybe not in a pure defensive standpoint. Maybe it's not 100% of everyone's job description, but whether you care about privacy or interoperability, then you care about security. If you care about, development and, creating efficiencies through connection of systems, then you care about security. If you care about marketing, if you care about, legal and policy concerns, you're in some ways caring about security. And so I think that the landscape of the workforce is going to actually increase, which makes it even more important for us to identify how we can get more, cohorts and qualified candidates into these roles, because I think the demands are actually going to become more exponentially significant than they are today.
And I think they are exponentially happening today as we speak. I mean, only a year ago, I did a presentation on the digital landscape, and we're talking about zettabytes, petabytes. We're talking about all the data. Now we're talking about Internet of Things and the digital economy. It's becoming predominant. In fact, it might be 100% in the future. And so with that comes cybersecurity. And I agree, whether you are a cybersecurity specific specialist or professional, I think the cohort of cybersecurity savvy people is a necessity given the digital economy. And so whether it's through this program or programs like it that will roll off or mimic it and copy it, which is a good thing, then I think that's where the future lies. It's already in the cards. It's already what's happening.
Yeah, I think both my two co-panelists said it really spot on. Cybersecurity is touching everything, whether that's how you think about, and I want to speak specifically to government agencies for a moment on this side, whether it's how you think about international trade issues and national security on over to how the Department of Defense and DIA and CIA protect us in certain ways, right? And so whether it's the actual technical component pieces or the policy capacity to understand these issues and center on them, it is growing. Certainly from the Mastercard perspective and a financial services and technology company side, it's unambiguous. It touches every single component piece of our company, whether it's our regulatory and policy side on over to how our security team protects us, on over to creating amazing products around digital identity and smart cities, and how we support our small and medium businesses, which I would be remiss if I don't make that point in the current environment that we're in, with this amount of people out of business and our small businesses continuing to struggle. As we think about rebuilding and the points that my two panelists just made on moving towards a digital economy, empowering them with the resources and types of skilled professionals that they're going to need to build back is going to be especially important going forward.
Great, thank you everyone. I'm going to open it up to questions. So just remember to put some in the chat function and we will read them to the panelists to answer. And I'm going to start with the first question that came through. It is, do you work with the Scholarship for Service scholarship program? And so the answer to that in short is we'd love to more. We've been setting up the program. We just did our pilot year. We are familiar with that program. It's a great pathway. And I think you're specifically asking about the CyberCore group. But we'd love to connect with them more now that we have participants and see how we can align our work with their work. And so we definitely will be following up with them after this. So thank you for that reminder to do so. I don't know if anyone else on the panel is familiar with the program or has thoughts on that. It's a great pathway.
I am, and I think they're fantastic. And I know several of the folks over there, and we are starting to work with them further. But we wanted to get our house in order first before we moved on to that. I will say the schools that fall into the scholarships that are particularly tied to that program, we all are through this program as well. And so we see a collaborative environment here. And so all for it.
Great, thanks. The next question is, can you talk about the structure of the process as seen from the participants? Is there a foundational training course that they all go through? And I'll talk about the professional development side of that. And basically we just launched our orientation program 2 weeks ago. That is a foundation. We spent 2 days with our participants, just really welcoming them to the federal government, kind of letting them understand what opportunities that they're going to be working on in the public sector, also how they're going to be working with the private sector in their role in the public sector, really just acclimating them, starting them to build their goals and professional and personal goals while they're in the program in the public sector, and how to lead at their level, how to communicate, kind of getting that baseline. And then what we're going to do is have quarterly sessions with them throughout the 2 years on different topic areas. The first year is really focusing on, how to get their goals, how to develop their skills. And then the second year that they're in the program in the public sector, they're going to be focused more on their career and kind of figuring out what they want to do after. And so I think that's sort of the structure of the program. Simone already mentioned the technical training. So that'll be happening while they're the 2 years in the federal government. And so they're going to be constantly learning and training throughout those 2 years.
And the only other thing I will add to that is that from a technical perspective, the cybersecurity training they receive is foundational. It's meant to be the kind of coverage over any area that covers a work role that's mapped to NICE. So it's really kind of that entry point. Participants throughout the remainder of their 2 years, many of them are dealing with individual agencies who also have training identified for them as they continue to specialize in their roles.
Great. The next question is, how is it determined which participants end up at which participating agencies and organizations? So could one participant end up with multiple offers and another with none? So basically what happens is the partnership conducts an eligibility review when the application closes. We recruit subject matter experts to help us assess, read the application materials, assess the candidates based on different areas, their technical abilities, their leadership potential, their problem solving and critical thinking ability, their interest in this cross-sector opportunity, and their overall application. So after that, we then conduct phone interviews with subject matter experts, also to make sure that they can articulate basic cybersecurity concepts and really articulate why they're interested in this program. And then they do go on to our federal agencies for final assessments and interviews. They might get multiple offers. Some candidates did have multiple offers. The candidates then have the choice of which one they want, which opportunity they want to go to. If they have one offer from one agency, that is the offer that they are given and typically accept. And then you're right, some folks we didn't place everybody because there just weren't all the opportunities we had. So we do hope that we give them resources to whatever career path they want to go on. Hopefully they'll pursue that through another pathway that isn't this program. Are you providing a means for participants to form their own support community during and or after the program? So yes, so we are working to build their networks. So we are going to be having not only the professional development opportunities that we've mentioned, but there will be networking events for them as well to kind of be building their communities, building them as a cohort, working together and having them figure out what each of them are doing at their own agencies and hopefully sharing their lessons and best practices. And we're also going to be building that alumni community. So once they're out of the program, we want to keep them engaged, keep them as ambassadors to the program, and really help the next cohorts after them to help them on their career path as well. Does anyone else want to kind of talk about how they see those communities working and building through this program?
No, just to simply re-emphasize the importance of both mentorship and communities of interest and support. And I think that this program does create that. And as we anticipate going to next year, what that community may look like. I mean, we're looking internally how we create that community, and separate even from this program is, and what we're learning from the program is a communication campaign that's intentional, that creates that community, particularly with COVID and in a virtual environment, is really important. And that kind of networking. So the irony is, we think everything is tried and true, but we're learning something from this program itself of how to do these things better and how to incorporate an incoming community like someone through the CTI program.
I love it. By the way, if we don't have this, we should make sure there's a alumni LinkedIn page that stays with our folks. So great idea, anonymous attendee.
I also want to chime in. I love the comment in the questions around threat hunters that existed in 2011. I agree. That's actually exactly my point, is that a lot of the roles and the functions that were being done weren't formalized into a role that we hired for. And so that's impossible to like bring people into it. It's not until the industry catches up and says, oh, you're already doing this work. You kind of made your own job up. Like now we have to actually bring this into the broader population to make it a real role. That is exactly the reason why I think it's so important to provide the mentorship, but also be kind of fungible as the industry and the roles change so much.
Mm-hmm. And if I could put a plug into the cybersecurity pathways tool that the VA, CISA, and DoD, created. I mean, this is where that kind of standardization, but at the same time looking at how those pathways evolve over time. And now we're looking at and becoming a little more sophisticated and nuanced about those roles. That's where that kind of play with industry, with the federal partners and this program, we're all kind of learning, only because it's evolving. It's always constantly evolving.
Great, we have about 1 minute left. There's a bunch of questions about the growth of CTI and scaling up the program in the next couple of years. I'll say something real quickly is that we are very interested in getting more opportunities at agencies. We're looking to get more corporate partners to help join the initiative. We really need the support to make sure that it does. We have the ability to grow. So we are looking for folks to commit to helping to develop recent graduates in these roles. Does anyone else want to kind of talk about your vision of the program as we kind of end this session?
I'd say my vision is why I gave those 4 numbers and the need for us to grow and scale and the opportunity here. It's both a way to build the ecosystem that's fulfilling for immediate needs of federal agencies, but also to the private sector. And to lift up and create pathways, I think, and open that aperture is foundational. But simply put, we can't do that alone. And it's good to be at year 1, but now it's time for us to scale together. So yes, it's going to grow over the next 3 to 5 years.
Agreed.
Great. Well, I think we're at time. I want to thank our panelists, Alex, Rob, and Simone. Thank you for your wisdom and advice and thoughtfulness as usual. And thank you for everyone for attending the session. If you want to follow up or have any questions, please look at our website at cybertalentinitiative.org. Thanks, everyone.